I think it works now. All right. Let's see if it stabilizes this time. It's really weird. It's just my connection has been dipping today, specifically for some reason. Alright, I think that's working now. So what do we have here? I see Kirby's heading over to Omega Pirate? Is that what it's called? Whatever that guy's name is. And Zayloox is heading over to get the artifact in the Tower in Fendrana. Oh man. Sorry about that. I've been struggling so much with the technical difficulties. Kind of lost track of the race itself. So where do I start with Metroid Prime? So we got these Hunter Metroids in lower phazon mines that are just such a pain to actually hit with anything. There's an issue with the targeting in the game where it tries to follow your target, and like whenever you shoot, it'll try to track nearby enemies like close to your reticle, and it'll try to shoot like ahead of them, like where they're moving, so by the time your beam gets there it'll hit. But the problem is they usually don't move in a straight line. So with the way the Hunter Metroids and the regular Metroids sometimes tend to move around, well, a lot of enemies in general, it has a tendency to just completely miss because they're just constantly turning. You could sometimes use that to your advantage because it has the same effect for the pirates' weapons as well. So if you just wiggle back and forth, a lot of times you could just completely dodge shots. They have a really low accuracy in the first place, but you can weave between the bullets because they're, I mean, apparently beam bullets are slower than actual bullets. It helped me a lot in my first playthrough. Okay, well, now that I have some kind of grasp on where we are in the race, hi everyone, I'm Jagger G. I started commentating the Metroid Fusion race the other day, and I've played this game quite a bit, so I know a lot about the game. I haven't seen much of the modern route, other than the last couple races. I've been following the tournament, but I haven't studied it so much myself personally since the early wave Sun route was determined, like deemed viable for a single segment run. So we got Omega Pirate here that has quite a few interesting exploits. If like, it helps a lot when you're fighting them casually as well. You start off the fight just by boosting to the side of them and then skipping the cutscene, and that'll keep him it'll keep him in the breaking out of the tube animation, but since the cutscene is skipped, he'll just be standing in place, playing, like, acting out the cutscene, even though it's already been skipped. And similarly to other pirates in the game, he'll also be easily manipulated into just spinning in circles if you just run around him, as long as you don't make direct eye contact. His AI won't ever begin until that moment when you stare deeply into his eyes and his into yours. It's something we try to avoid. And then another big thing that can easily manipulate him is, well, not so much manipulate him, but just knowing how he pops up in those phazon pools in the ground. There are 3 phazon pools in the room, and he'll always start at the far side, but after that, he'll never appear in the same pool twice, and he'll never appear in the pool you're closest to, so you could manipulate that as well and know exactly where he's gonna show up every time he appears, and you can prepare your shots accordingly. And over on Zaylux's side, it looks like he's getting through Thardis, and you're actually not supposed to have the plasma beam. At this point, I believe it actually does extra damage to him for some reason as well. You're normally supposed to fight Thardis to get the spider ball from him, and use that in conjunction with other late game items as well to get the plasma beam. But since Metroid Prime, the game, is basically all about standing on any and everything in the room, you can just get the plasma beam much earlier than you're supposed to. You can get a lot of things much earlier than you're supposed to. And thus getting things out of order, hence the phrase sequence break that's been so prominent in speedrunning culture. I see a lot of people popping on the thermal visor to fight him to show his weak point, to show which rock you have to shoot next. An alternative that I used to go for was whenever he would roll up into a ball, I would just bomb him immediately, and that would instantly make that particular rock vulnerable. But I suppose it's been more recently discovered that you could probably... I guess I'm kind of assuming, I don't know all of the details, but it does look like these days people are going for trying to make it vulnerable before the rolling even starts. Which obviously would be faster than waiting for the roll and then bombing it. It does, like, rolling out of it also helps to avoid the charge as well. Okay, a charged plasma shot and a missile will reveal it as well. That's good. That would be a lot faster than the waiting to bomb it. I suppose you could do a bomb jump to get up to the rock and then bomb it before he rolls. But that's a safe strat. Just waiting for him to roll was a safe thing I always did when I ran it. So Kirby, having beaten the Omega Pirate, just has a few things left before he could get to the end of the game. Metroid Prime generally is a game where you gotta collect upgrades first, and then you gotta go and on this basically an Easter egg hunt for 12 artifacts around the planet surface that that when you have all of them allow you access to the inside of the impact crater near the landing site, and that will trigger boss fights and whatnot, and you beat the game, of course. But to get the items, he's got a lot of places to explore and some mini bosses to fight as well, such as this Phazon Elite Pirate, and basically all of these elite pirates, these huge, like 20-foot tall pirates. What else are you gonna call them, I guess? Zibetians. Sure, why not? They all have the same basic the strategy exploit, where before the fight starts, as long as it never gazes longingly into your eyes at the start of the fight, it'll never attack you. It's an important thing to learn in the game, as well as in real life. It's also true, where you can only truly hate someone when you truly love them. And when they don't catch your eye, you don't feel too strongly for them, I guess. So now Kirby's gotta climb up these sections of this spider track puzzle that he doesn't need to solve because you could stand on everything. It's, there are very particular spots to stand, and you need a bit of reliable ways to jump to them to make sure you don't slide off, because momentum tends to carry, and if you like land on a slope with too much vertical speed, you'll just slip off the side. And with the years of practice he's had, he's able to get through there pretty easily. I've been running a lot of these. I've been, well, attempting to run a lot of these Metroids, and the Prime series is definitely one of the. Actually, the Prime series is definitely the hardest set of games I've ever tried to run. And every trick you see in speedruns, it can take hours, and in some cases days, to learn them. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just terrible. But then again, so is every speedrunner, as they self-proclaim. And I actually didn't notice this. Oh, I guess... Did Kirby grab the spider ball? It looks like he might have. If I remember right, I believe there is a difference in the Morph Ball graphic when you skip spider ball, so I think he actually does have it, since it looks pretty normal. There are a lot of optional it well, I guess the best way to describe Metroid Prime speedrunning is it's a very customizable run to your personal skill level. A lot of people I'm noticing in the tournament, I've only watched a few matches and I've seen a few different routes based on what tricks people are confident in being able to get within an hour. Whatever they're confident in being able to do quickly enough to actually save the time it's supposed to save. There are a lot of tricks, such as skipping Spider Ball, that save maybe 2 minutes, but if you're unable to do the tricks necessary to skip it, then you'll wind up losing more than 2 minutes in order to skip it. It's just not worth it. Oh man. Looks like Zayloox is having to double back to get through one of these Metroid caves. It's a lot of these tricks, like a lot of the dashes, a lot of the L jumps, and a lot of the techniques are technically easy, but sometimes if you just make one slight movement error, you'll wind up you'll fall off a ledge and have to go back to the beginning of the room, and that's a big part of why Metroid Prime is such a difficult game to run. The slightest mistake, it'll only cost seconds, but it'll cost seconds across like countless rooms, dozens, maybe for some over 100 rooms you'll lose a second or two in. Zayloox having problems with the invisible bamboos. What? I believe they're... Are they bamboos in this game or echoes? I can never remember. They keep changing the names of pretty much the same enemies. They have a tendency to just float directly where you're trying to jump, and since they're invisible, and it takes a few seconds to bring up the X-ray visor, and when you have it on your oh no, I'm thinking of something else. But it's just kind of a... You don't think to switch visors, and you're just used to going through... Oh man. I did not say that, I'm sure Zayloox is kind of new going in that it was a very risky game. A lot of, well, not a risky game, just a very difficult game. I I would not expect to get through an entire tournament without uh, at least one run with a death, especially down here in Phazon Mines. And with a new route, it appears to me that you get fewer E-tanks than you used to have access to before the Wave Sun route. And technically speaking, in Phazon Mines, each individual room isn't so bad. You can get through them all with relative ease and only take maybe a tank or two worth of damage. But they string together a lot with these rooms in the lower sections between safe stations, and I would not be surprised to see him opting for a... Actually, it would be strongly recommended for every runner to save before the Omega Pirate. But of course, the top tier runners are just so much more confident. It's, not so much that the Omega Pirate is necessarily a hard fight, but if the slightest thing goes wrong, it really compounds. Like, if you fail to do the manipulations just right, he can kind of get away from you. And just, uh, it'll cost a lot of time, but because of costing a lot of time, as a result of costing a lot of time, you'll spend a lot more time just in the line of fire. And that's kind of similarly true for the rooms leading up to him as well. You don't get the room, if you don't get through the room just the way you want to, there's a tendency to just kind of get uh, bounced back and just held down and bashed over and over. Okay, so KirbymastaH's on the final boss. I kind of... I was kind of focused on Zayloox during his Ridley fight, but now that he's on Metroid Prime, there are a lot of problems with this boss fight, I guess you could say. It's whatever weakness he has each round, each phase, uh, is completely randomized. The first two floors is just a 50-50 between charge and wave weakness. On the second floor, it's 1 in 3 chance of charge wave and, well, power beam wave and ice. And third floor is those three plus plasma beam. And then the fourth floor, it gets more aggressive and switches more frequently, not just after doing so much damage, but just whenever it feels like it. Even while you're shooting at it, just kind of trolls you, just showing you one weakness and then switching it as you're charging up. And it has quite a few attacks that do considerable damage, but that's not actually, it's not too particularly difficult to avoid them for the most part. But one way to kind of manipulate Metroid Prime to some degree, there's still quite a bit of randomness to it, but if you stay kind of close to it, as you'll see a lot of runners doing, it'll tend more often to try to swipe at you. And that makes it more consistent to hit. Well, also being really close to it makes it easier to hit as well. And he's also going for shots like while it's charging. It'll close its eyes so you can't shoot it. But roughly halfway through the charge, it'll open its eyes because you're supposed to be dodging. But if you wait till the last second, like as you're about to get hit and then shoot at it, you kind of have to manually aim, but it's not too difficult since it's charging directly at you. It's just presenting its weak point to you, essentially. It's moving pretty fast though, so it's not super consistent to get. But he's just getting in a little bit of extra damage after each round. And oh man, he's dangerously low on health. And I apologize for there's a bit of a delay in my commentary. I'm unfortunately unable to view the lesser delay stream, and I see, unfortunately, lost a lot of time there. He's not out of the race though. He's really close, but unless he actually literally forfeited it. They have both died. So it's not necessarily like, it would be a close race. It's a really unfortunate turn of events. Zayloox does definitely have an advantage here, having the phase-on suit, whereas Kirby went back to right before the Omega Metroid, the Omega Pirate fight, rather. It looks like Kirby is opting to just bow out and not finish it up. It would be tough to come back from this. Omega Pirate can take quite a bit of time. And the backtrack to the artifact can take quite a bit of time as well. I know he's been practicing for several years, so, like, personally, I think he would stand a chance. But if he just doesn't want to finish up, that's really up to him. And Zayloox, I believe, I'm not sure 100% on the tournament rules, but I believe he has to finish in order to claim the victory. It's so unfortunate that I should not have mentioned those attacks being relatively easy to dodge. Did not see that coming. Because usually he, uh, well, I'll go into it when Zayloox gets to the boss. Oh, yeah, this final energy tank pickup here is not necessarily because they're gonna need. Well, not necessarily because they're gonna need extra energy, but more because it's just a very convenient place to fully recover health. Okay, Kirby does have a pretty good strategy here, though. Like, in forfeiting this particular race, he does actually gain the advantage of being able to order dinner sooner than he otherwise would have if he finished. So there's a silver lining to this probable loss. It's good to know he still gets something out of the deal. Consolation prize, if you will. He was doing really well. So now Zayloox is just doing his final cleanup now. He's got to go down and fight the Phazon Elite. Let's see, with the new route, I think it's just the Phazon Elite, the Artifact and Chozo, the Hall of Elders, and Chozo Ruins, and then back to the ship for the final save before Wiggly. There is another save station inside the impact crater, but people never take that because it's not very expected to get such bad luck on. Well, it's expected to get bad luck and lose a lot of time to Metroid Prime, but usually he'll drop a lot of health refills. So this Phazon Elite, it's very difficult to manage missiles before, like leading up to him. There are quite a few. Well, you don't wind up getting very many missile tanks in the route, and this guy takes, I believe, what is it, 25 missiles, I think, to kill? Maybe less than that, but you only get around 30, but the problem is, since you had just beaten the Omega Pirate, you're you've used most of your missiles already. Unless you went strictly with the plasma beam, but usually I see people shooting off its limbs with missiles. So then you wind up having to rely on drops leading up to the phase on elite. And it looks like he wasn't fully 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 replenished, so he had to finish it off with a charge beam. And it's not necessarily a problem so much as it is just an unfortunate time loss. It's just it's an easy to manipulate fight, so this skipping this spider ball puzzle is trickier than most pros make it look, for sure. Very, very small standable spots to get to, and they're a lot of them are sloped, so if you have too much momentum, either vertical or horizontal, you can slip right off. It's really hard to see what exactly you could stand on. A lot of the geometry that you can stand on, it doesn't look so obvious. Like, part way up, there's just these pipes sticking out that you would think you would slip off because it's round. But since it's kind of like angled in a corner sort of thing, the hitbox apparently allows you to stand like it's out of the wall just enough for you to be able to stand on it. And at the top is the end of the spider ball puzzle. And it turns out, since it is just protruding from the walls, it's just a little plank that runs across the top of it. You could just barely jump up onto it from the railing. You have to be almost at the apex of your jump to reach it. And there's a slightly easier method that involves using a power bomb to blow up some debris and standing on top of one of the structures that you're normally supposed to use to solve the puzzle. And that gives you a little more height and puts you a little further away from the track that you're supposed to jump to. But in a way it makes it easier, but the distance also kind of tricks you into the like wanting to use some movement techniques with the R button to gain some more distance, and that just loses your aerial control. Whenever you hit R in the air, that's the button you use to, for those who don't know, it's the button you use to aim your gun. Very unique controls, to say the least. It makes sense once you get used to it for this type of game, but at the same time, you would rather have dual analogs in a lot of cases. And in this case, it makes for some issues. As I was saying, since it makes you look around, that means it no longer uses the control stick to move. So once you hit R, you're just stuck flying through the air without control. Well, without much control. Although the advantage is you could kind of curve your jump. Well, I mean, you could just strafe around with L instead. But the advantage... You know what, I'm not entirely sure what that advantage is anymore. There's a lot of old information on Metroid 2002 about various speed techniques, and you know what? I've learned so much about the game that I know a lot of old information that is no longer true as well. I know well enough not to bring up the L-lock spring jumps that apparently was just a placebo effect, where you would change the angle of your where you're aiming and then release it to get more distance, and that didn't do anything after all. There was another mechanic that didn't necessarily involve where you were aiming at all. It was more along, well, not so much at all, but it was more along the lines of holding the L button locked to your, well, capped your, didn't cap, it's already capped. It locked to your movement speed, and at the start of your jump, it slows you, normally at the start of your jump you slow down, and as you progress in the arc of your jump you speed up more. But by holding L, you cancel that slowdown, and releasing it a split second later, you're then able to gain more speed than you were initially traveling at. Did I say is no longer true? That's a pretty good phrase. Is no longer true. I like it. So yeah, 13 frames after you jump, you start to speed up. So as long as you're holding L before that, you won't slow down initially. So unfortunately, jumping straight forward, your speed is actually capped. But you could get around this cap by moving sideways instead. So there are a lot of really minor details that just kind of got through testing, I suppose. There are a lot of details that it took years for people to figure out and learn how to exploit, and we knew there were peculiarities with the mechanics early on, like way back in when people were starting to organize speedrun techniques back in 2003. They knew that holding L at first and then letting go at some point had an effect. Just because they would be unable to reach certain platforms one way, and then they would be able to some other way. But they didn't exactly know why. And now that we know why, well, I suppose now that they know why, the people actively running the game these days, they have a significant advantage. I wouldn't say the game is any easier, but learning it is easier, I'd say. And that's a good thing, really. We want as many people to learn speed games as possible. That just it doesn't just bring competition to push us to our own personal limits, but it also somehow every year it winds up advancing the meta. Every time I look at the community, there's something new discovered in some game. It's been around since the beginning of time. Okay, so, oh man, I've been watching him fighting Ridley and just rambling on and just completely overlooked the it just becomes like second nature when you watch so many runs that this just looks like totally normal gameplay. But Ridley does have quite a few tricks to him, such as, for some reason, during his first phase, he's supposed to be an aerial boss, and you're supposed to only be able to reach him with the beam and missiles and whatever. So he's actually weak to the boost ball, and for some reason it does 50,000 damage per frame? Is that per frame? Well, regardless, it doesn't have nearly that much health, so it just immediately drops his HP down to close to a quarter. And it initiates the second phase of the fight, where he's on the ground, and there's a whole mess of ways to I was just admiring that that jump so much. I just completely lost my train of thought. I'll just skip ahead to that. So there's also a movement technique in the game that he used earlier in the when he was encountering that Metroid, let's put it that way. Where you're supposed to go up this series of floating platforms in the middle, just kind of spiraling up towards the top. But you could actually go from the cave entrance, just kind of jump up on the wall by getting a boost off of the slope in the terrain. If you're running up a slope, you'll gain extra height off of it. It seems really counterintuitive, because if you're running up a slope, that means you were already lower down, so you shouldn't get as much height. But it actually gives you an increase in your jump because you're traveling upward. And it has, of course, naturally the opposite effect when you're running down a slope. But if you just run up this little slope, it gives you just enough height to reach one of the standable spots in the wall. They're just because of the high attention to detail and the environments of in Metroid Prime. There are a bunch of roots and stuff in the walls, and that's all just piles of collision. So you can get on top of that, and there are places you can stand and just climb your way halfway up the room without having to go all the way around. And that's common with a lot of the general techniques in the game. Not so much in this boss fight. So this boss fight, as I explained, it goes through 4 phases where you gotta shoot the appropriate beam according to the color of his face. It's not at all a racial thing. It's completely random which one he switches to, and he has certain limitations. But as I was going to say earlier, he has a tendency to do this attack where he launches these homing missiles that just slowly track your movement. They're just these little energy orbs that drift towards you very slowly, and they do quite a bit of damage. However, if you destroy them, it just takes a missile. I believe it's just a single missile, and they tend to drop. They'll either drop missile refills or health, and most of the time it has a really high chance of dropping ultra health, which gives you 100 little golden orbs. They're basically little golden snitches. And that's usually extremely useful, but also extremely scary, because if you happen to beat Metroid Prime while those things are active, you can actually get hit during the cutscene and actually die. So you'll want to make sure, if you're close to ending a phase, or at least ending the 4th round, then you'll want to make sure none of those are in the room when you finish. Let me just turn this on. And he's also gotten pretty bad luck, not just with the... Actually, I've been so distracted by how bad luck on health drops he's gotten. I haven't noticed the luck on the weaknesses themselves. pretty much, like, if he can get this last round done, he's pretty close to home free. There's, of course, always a last-ditch effort by the final boss. A classic mechanic in a lot of games. So, if you haven't seen Metroid Prime before, spoiler alert, there is another phase after this. I don't want to jinx anything, but it looks like he's pretty much got it down. So, okay, so the second phase starts off just by destroying a lot of pillars in the room, and all of those have a chance at dropping health, and usually you'll get plenty of health to deal with the final phase, and it usually doesn't wind up hitting you with its own attacks very often. Or at least not for enough damage to necessarily worry about. Unless you're super low on health. So once again, there's a trick to this boss as well. Not necessarily a manipulation, but a quirk with the phazon pool that he spits out on the ground that allows you to go into hyper mode. So it lasts for 25 seconds. But when you're firing it, it only has about 5 seconds worth of energy to it, roughly. So when you're standing in the pool, just firing at it, it'll drain after 5 seconds. But if you walk in and out of the pool, for whatever reason, it'll just not actually start draining the pool. For a short window. So if you just keep walking back and forth in and out of it, you can make it last the entire 25 seconds and get a lot more damage on them than usual. It typically takes 4 rounds to kill it, but with the walking in and out strategy, it can take as few as 2 pools to finish it off. But what a lot of players will often go for is a 3-pool strat, wherein you are walking back and forth to do more damage per pool, but you can also kind of accelerate how often it lays pools, because it'll do a few attacks and then it'll lay a pool, so you can actually interrupt those attacks whenever you damage it with a phazon shot, the hyper shot. I believe it's a phazon beam. It'll stun it, like, in the middle of its attack, and that'll advance its AI to do another attack and another attack, and pretty soon it'll give you another pool much sooner than it ordinarily would if you just gave it the full 5 seconds and let it go. So, congrats on Zayloox for the victory over KirbymastaH. It's a very Kirby is definitely a very competent player, a very formidable opponent, and it's just one unfortunate mistake that knocked him out this time around. I would have liked to see him go further in the tournament personally, but, you know, not everyone can advance. It's always great to see, well, to see anyone advance in tournaments, no matter who it is, and see like how they play the next match differently. See how they adapt to new situations. And of course, with any speedrun, it's fun to see how people adapt to new things going wrong. So I'm hoping Zayloox is looking forward to that. And I certainly am. And while this may be called the losers bracket, it is by no means over. It is certainly not lost. They do have a chance in the end to, like, the last person left will get to rematch the winners bracket. And yeah, 205 RTA, that's even better than I've ever done. I've ran it for a couple years, and you got a time like that, even with the death, he's just done so much more than me. He's mastered the game. It's very impressive. It's a very difficult game to pick up and get into. I believe he's been around for a while as well. .135 final in-game time. It's really good. I know when I was first starting out, I was putting up times at like 4 hours or so. So for first, fourth or fifth finished run by the looks, as Zayloox says in the chat, that's a very good time. So thank you very much for the race. Looking forward to more in the future. And it's like tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time is gonna be a Minish Cap race. Let's see, Fiesel, are you still there? You know who's gonna be in that race? I personally usually stick to Metroid, but I can certainly dig some Zelda speedrunning, for sure. It's great to watch, at least. So, Kitty versus Isual. I'm gonna go with that pronunciation. It sounds exotic. Okay, at 10 p.m. Is that 10 p.m. tonight? So we got not only Zelda, but also a kitty. That's definitely really exciting, if I'm understanding it right. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.